Maybe surprisingly, we haven't really talked much about what has actually been learned about human intelligence from the psychometric data that's accumulated over the past 100 years. And one of the things that you said that I hadn't expected, but that surprised me in the course of the conversation was that the ability to pay attention is a big part of intelligence. I mean, it makes sense. It had never occurred to me before, but what have been some of the other maybe big surprises? I mean, it's a surprising finding that intelligence falls on human intelligence falls it's normally distributed. That's very surprising in itself. Are there, or it looks like you have something to say to that. Maybe you,
Well, I mean, it's kind of a hard question for me to answer because I've been living with this stuff for 40, 50 years, so what's surprising? Intelligence test scores are stable over long periods of time.
between people, like one person who,
One person, yeah, longitudinal studies. So I like to talk about a study that was done in Scotland in the 1930s, where the government decided they wanted to give an intelligence test to every single kid who was 11 years old in the whole country. And they did. I think it was like a week's period of time. And they got all this IQ data. It wasn't a sample, it was the population, literally. And they did some things with this, but all the data were locked away in a storeroom at Edinburgh University, discovered decades later by a friend of mine, Ian Deary, who's a professor there. And he got all these old handwritten records, all the names of everybody, all their scores. And, basically, he digitized everything. And he found a bunch of those individuals were still alive in their 70s. He brought them in for DNA and intelligence testing and neuroimaging and published a whole bunch of studies on this group. But one of the findings was the high correlation between their IQ score at age 11 and their subsequent retest at age 70, showing stability of the IQ score. But the really surprising finding from that study was I mentioned that some of the people were still alive. He went back and looked at death records for the whole sample. I mean, they have all this stuff for the whole country. And he divided all these 11-year-olds into quartiles based on their 11-year-old IQ score. And then he looked at the death records. And it turns out if you were in the highest quartile of IQ at age 11, twice as many people in that group were alive at age 75 than the lower quartile. This is in a country with socialized medicine and universal health care. So, what's this about? There's been some research, quite a bit of research, trying to understand why this is the case. That was a surprising finding. A similar longitudinal study started at Johns Hopkins in 1971 when I started graduate school. I worked on that study a little bit, looking for scientifically and mathematically precocious kids. They gave the SAT math score to 11, 12, and 13-year-olds. And they found kids who were scoring as high on SAT math as incoming Hopkins freshmen. And those kids have now been studied literally for 50 years. And it turns out that single test score at age 11 predicts enormous levels of achievement, through their careers. Some of them went on to college early, and some of them have gone on to very illustrious academic and non-academic careers. So one test score, age 11, predictive. So, there's a lot of interesting things about intelligence. It's obviously important. When you talk about the normal distribution, here's something I worry about. You talk about the normal distribution, and you don't even have to adjust for group differences. In the normal distribution in the United States, the top 1% in the IQ distribution is about 3 million people. The top 1% in China is 1.3 or 4 billion, I'm sorry, is 13 or 14 million people. So you have many more people operating at a high end just by virtue of the population numbers. And, people have made the argument that economies of countries are driven by the top 1 or 2% of the population for innovation and management and all the things that make countries successful. They got 14 million, we got 3 million. There has to be an impact of that. And especially if somebody finds a way to increase intelligence, that could have all kinds of implications on national competition level, as opposed to individual within a country going to school. So there's a lot here. And sometimes I wonder what we're going to know 100 years from now. 100 years ago, we were getting just positive manifold, simple correlations. Not right now, we're getting polygenic scores, neuroimaging, cognitive testing, psychometrics. What are we going to know 100 years from now? I hope a lot.